Hey guys, Rinji here, once again bringing you the worst out of the VTuber community. And today we have something I frequently talk about when it comes to VTuber community-related problems or VTuber drama. It's the cyclical nature of it, and it always cycles back to some of the same problems. Today we have one that is cultural appropriation. Without further ado, let's get into it and see what today's subject had to say about it. Culture appropriation, racism, colorism, yellowface/Asian fishing, and whitewashing VTubing, media and content creation in general, an incomplete thread. Before I start, there's a few things I'm going to say. This is not directed at anyone specific, but if the shoe fits, I'm by no means an expert, but I will source and cite anything I can. Usually herself or people who think like her, not someone that's an expert or anything like that. Don't just take my words at face value, really dig for the truth yourself. That being said, I'm Korean Chinese. I am American born, you can tell. That's all you need to know in my background. I was raised in my culture, and honestly, I didn't know the difference between the two, because to me they were the same. It was my heritage taught to me, and it was my culture. Does this make me an expert on all things Asian? Of course not, but hopefully it gives me some light into a few things I'm going to be talking about. Asian American culture is very different than mainland Asian culture. Here's a few key differences. One of the differences is that there's very few people that get upset about things that aren't supposed to be offensive to anybody. Asian Americans specifically will react far more strongly to someone wearing our culture than a mainlander will. To us, that is clothing. It is part of our culture. It's our heritage. Things that are just seen as clothing, such as jubao, is seen as culturally sacred. Meanwhile, in mainland China, it's just a dress. Here, little things like that are all we can hang on to for our culture. It's something we can enjoy and appreciate for our heritage. Me researching jubao for design, reading an article, laughing at the thought of some random as non-Asian girl going to prom in a cheapo. Imagine running up to a prom and your friend is dressed up like your mom at a nice dinner. I mean, again, it's just a dress. People can wear whatever they want, can't they? Sometimes, you know, part of that culture appreciation is thinking that something looks nice and then you want to wear it. Culture appropriation is very real. It might not be clothing, but that's where it starts. It starts with someone cosplaying in our culture. A lot of us feel the same of someone wearing our clothing as, say, natives feel when their culture is also being worn as a costume. It's really trying to start trouble over things that just aren't offensive to most people, but it's offensive to them because someone else that is not from the culture is wearing it. There was a VTuber who had traveled to Japan, studied Shinto, and actually became a certified Miko. This is culture appreciation. She studied and she respected culture that she herself was not born into. See, this is the problem with her argument. She thinks that culture appreciation needs to be something that you're educated into. Like, you cannot wear a specific piece of clothing unless you learn the history behind it. You can't find it just, you know, being nice looking and then you want to wear it. That's not appreciation enough, or not appreciation at all. For some reason, you have to learn most things about it, become certified when it comes to specific things in order to be a true culture appreciator. If you have a partner who comes from a different background and you explore, learn, and educate yourself on their customs and culture because they shared it with you, respecting in return is all we ask you. This is culture appreciation. I mean, this we ask you again, just because you come from a specific culture, even if it's Asian American, doesn't mean you own it. Not everyone is going to have the same mindset as you do, even stemming from the same culture. This is just like holding things hostage or holding someone accountable for things that they just aren't guilty of. But VTubing makes it so easy for people to play tourist in so many cultures. And we really don't have many ways to verify or know when someone is really appropriating. They just leave them alone. That's what VTubing gives you. Anonymity. You don't have to look behind the avatar in order to see if someone is quote-unquote appropriating culture. You can tell that the Hololive, most of the Hololive JP VTubers are gonna be taking things from other culture. You have a knight, you have a pirate, you have a clown, for God's sake. You have everything there. You have a goddess. You have everything under the sun when it comes to fictional stuff. We're so used to people appropriating Japanese culture. It's just a name. It's not. It really isn't. We're so normalized to stealing from Asian cultures. It's honestly really disgusting. If it was not anything else, we easily grasp it. But we're all just okay pretending to be Japanese. They aren't really pretending to be Japanese. A name is sometimes just a name. There's nothing behind it. We as people give meaning to these names. You can name anything, anyone to be anything, pretty much, and then you assign meaning to the name that you give them. Sure, certain names can have some meaning behind them, but it's pretty much the person that decides the name, that decides the significance of that name. Sometimes parents will give a baby name because it sounds nice. Sometimes they will give the baby a name because they think there's a specific meaning to them behind the name. It might not be the same cultural, historical meaning behind it, but it means something to those people. It's not always disgusting, and it's not stealing from anybody. Becky, it would be racist for you to be Guadalupe Lopez. Why can't you understand you can't be fucking Hinata Shojikaze? There's a difference between culture appreciation and appropriation. One is a respectful guest, another is a trespassing thief. Using another culture's name is thievery. It's stealing. Who are you to say if something is racist or appropriation when you're trespassing someone else's culture? It's not yours, doesn't belong to you. Why are you doing it? If you aren't part of the culture, who are you to say it's not appropriation? I'll have a small rant at the end of this video about this, because this is an attitude that really pisses me off. It's incredibly egotistical and self-centered, not to mention selfish and entitled. Incoming caps, because yes, I'm yelling. If you're not Jewish, you don't get to decide what's anti-Semitic. If you're not black, indigenous, or POC, you do not get to decide what's racist. If you're not trans, you do not get to decide what's transphobic. Do you see the pattern here? Yeah, I see the pattern of trying to squelch someone's speech. Just because you don't belong to a specific group doesn't mean you can have an opinion about these things, especially if something is racist or transphobic, for example. I've seen many times people try to use the argument that the word trap is a slur against transgender people. And they try to apply it to people that used it towards cartoon characters, not trans people at all. But no, just the word was defined as transphobic, and they use that the same argument. Just because you're not trans, you don't get to say what's offensive and what's not. This is just killing speech altogether with arguments like this. And on the flip side, just because one person says it's okay or one person says it's not, doesn't mean it's now okay / not okay. Don't just take my word for it. There's dozens upon hundreds upon thousands who have this opinion, not just in VTubing. Hot take. I definitely find it weird for people who are like, VTubing is just an extension of myself. I'm me when VTubing. String together 3 random Japanese words, a Korean handbook, and have a Chinese red envelope as their Oshimai, but Asian racism is so often overlooked. Jesus Christ. Again, sometimes you just take things from other cultures. It doesn't mean you're disrespecting them. It just means you find them appealing for whatever reason. Just because thanking something is not a reason to think it's offensive. It's not a reason to think that someone had ill intent when they do that. It's complete bullshit. VTubing is great because you get to sit behind an avatar which you can make it into anything you want. But just because it's an avatar doesn't mean you can simply disregard or disrespect other people and culture. It's not just a character; it's part of you. Or sometimes, you know, it's just a character. It doesn't really have to go that deep. For most people, it doesn't go that deep. And disrespect would be, you know, intentional. There has to be intent behind that disrespect. Just because you think something is disrespectful doesn't mean the person had ill intent. And holding this over their head is complete bullshit, and it's just not fair to them at all. Your VTubal model doesn't have to look like you. You can be anything you want, but doesn't allow you to perform blackface, Asian fishing, or appropriate any culture. Be a fish, be a cat, be a demon, be anything you want, but don't steal from cultures you don't actually respect. I wish these people know what blackface actually was about. It was intentional disrespect towards black people, presenting them in a specific way that meant to be derogatory. But, you know, they will say anything is blackface, yellowface, whatever. It is such a shutdown of any kind of discussion just because someone is offended. So what? Just, you know, block on and go. Don't make your offense someone else's problem. Don't say it doesn't hurt anyone to play pretend. Asians have always been disrespected in some regards as PoCs. Here's really good thread about the LA riots. Come on, you aren't gonna say that just because people play some characters, this is gonna be contributing to disrespect towards Asian people or any kind of people of color, just because someone decided to pretend a character online as a VTuber. Comparing these two is not apples to apples. This is like comparing an apple to a fucking grenade. Come on, man. You're better than this. You can make better arguments than that. VTubers really think it's alright to essentially steal from other cultures, and it's not okay. VTubers don't believe that. They do, at least 600 do. It's not a video game character, it's just your persona. It represents you. Nope. It doesn't have to represent you at all. You can be anything you want. And naming like these 600 people, thinking that there's some kind of villain, they had ill intent, is once again, you're just creating problems for the sake of creating problems, looking for enemies where enemies simply do not exist. If you want to play an Irish elf in D&D, sure, whatever. You want to play Japanese samurai in Dark Souls, sure, whatever. But the avatar you choose to portray you as your identity online, the avatar that you give life to, or vice versa, is black and you're white, that's a problem. No, it's not. It's simply not the same. The VTuber character doesn't have to be an extension of you at all. You just might find it appealing to have a character of a specific skin color, and that's it. Once again, there doesn't have to be any ill intent behind it. There's just no racism meant. I've only saw a person be completely disrespectful to a different race because they were trolled. They were trying to fuck with people, and that happened like once. No one, absolutely no one beyond trolls does it in the VTuber community. This is ridiculous. A ridiculous argument to make. Once again, looking for enemies. Content creation isn't a game to play. It's real people who are far too comfortable in pretending to be someone else. You want to pretend to be a demon? Sure. Go have fun. No one is getting hurt. Racial stereotypes stealing from real cultures, that ain't it, fam. The racial stereotypes of what exactly? What do you think these people do? Are the things that you mentioned before the racial stereotypes? Which one is it? It gets really confusing the more you're offended you get at something. TikTok's CEO being minimized to being part of a Chinese spy network being Singaporean is just one display of how normalized it is to target marginalized Asian people. Again, this has nothing to do with VTubing. This is just people being fucking stupid online, as they usually are, as all of this thread is. Bonus, Asian small dick was made by a white man who were getting mad that Filipino foreigners were swooping all over the white women. So they made it try and make them seem less appealing. Once again, who does this in VTubing? What is this example? You're just naming stereotypes that are racist, and somehow this is supposed to apply to VTubing. Digital yellow face is real. She's just it isn't appropriate any other culture. And linking Fujikakerin, because of course the person that keeps on talking about Japanese culture, and then Japanese people swoop in and tell them that she's mad. People love taking the thread out of context. I explained that argument behind why some Asian diaspora may find non-Asians pretending to be Japanese as a form of digital yellow face. People mainly openly lolicons and shotacons took offense, and it offended them. God, these people try to deflect everything on everyone. Because, oh, you know, the lolicons and shotacons got offended. And, you know, Fujikakerin is another person I would cover if she was some kind of VTuber, but people have already been on her case more than enough. Continuing on. Fujikakerin goes on more in the same thread. It's okay to play a character. It's not okay to feed off into weird racial mannerisms stemmed from stereotypes. It's just mad weird. If you can't see why pretending to be Japanese when you're not Japanese behind an anime avatar, especially acting out ooh kawaii mannerisms you don't naturally have, would be cringe as fuck and possibly upset mixed Asian diaspora, then it's not my problem. You know, it's also not your offense is also not their problem. Someone acting cute is not being racist. Like, you're trying to bring up like the weirdest of weebo stereotypes that absolutely do not exist, or you know, have fallen so out of use in the early 2000s that, you know, they just became a legend that people that don't know anything about otaku culture like to bring up to make some kind of own against people that don't exist. Why does it matter when it's just online for streaming? Who cares? Because who cares? Representation matter. We've gotten so used to different forms of it. We just make an excuse to accept it now. Oh, come on. You can represent whoever you want in whatever way you want. Just stop making the argument that people have ill intent and they're supposedly contributing to racism. It's just, you know, makes you look mad weird, as you put it beforehand. Why does casting in the Lilo and Stitch live action matter? Race and heritage was always integral to the character and the story, even without Stitch and family themes. If you still don't get it, you should rewatch it. It is a really good movie. Is this thread organized though? Not really, but it's a series of things that have been in the back of my mind and I wanted to get it out. I'll clean it up with more information at a later date, but hopefully this enlightens a few peeps. It enlightens me that you're I at this point I hate to use this term terminally online, but yeah, this is terminal online behavior, looking for problems where they're not, making enemies out of people just because you're offended, and somehow making your problems their problems. But you know, before I go, I have this to say. I talked about culture appropriation many times in my quote-unquote VTuber cringe gimmick account career. So let me reiterate that. Just because you're born into a specific culture doesn't mean you have to ownership of it. And you don't get to tell other people what they can do with it or not. Culture is built by a collective of people over long periods of time, and many individuals contribute to establishing it in major and minor ways. It's not a singular effort, and you really don't get to tell people what they can do with it. Dictating what others do with the culture seems like an extreme selfishness and entitlement, as you're essentially claiming ownership of something you might not have been involved in creating, because that's pretty much how it is. You're just born into something. Just because you're born into something, it doesn't mean you get to claim ownership of it, because there's people in the past that have contributed to creating it. You're just taking it just because you were born into it. It's not yours to have. I think it's important to preserve the roots of and integrity of a culture, as long as it doesn't glorify or promote to harm or well-being of your fellow man. Name me a culture in recent years that hasn't grown or developed in some ways as a result of outside influence. You can't stop other people from researching, interpreting, or incorporating a culture into their works or lives in different ways. This is how humanity prospers, not by setting limitations for cultural exchange, but by removing them. And I wrote all of this actually 2 years ago. I wrote all of this 2 years ago as I was talking about cultural appropriation on my Twitter. And people like Nameless, Demon Goddess here, they try to set those boundaries between cultures. They make it look like taking something from another culture is tantamount to stealing it. It's tantamount to disrespect. This shuts people down completely. It creates amazing division. Not only in like VTubing in general, but between people. Cultural exchange cannot happen with attitudes like that. We cannot prosper as people when you shut down discussion because you're looking for offense where there isn't any, and it wasn't intended at all. This is, once again, just looking for enemies where they don't exist, and identity politics in the modern day is completely based on that. And it's completely self-serving and selfish. This sense of entitlement that you can simply take ownership of a culture and just to dictate what other people can do with it, when it's in reality not even your own, just even if you were born into it. But for now, I will stop ranting because this gets into a zone about which I can pretty much speak for hours, and a video like this is not the perfect place for it. So for now, that is everything, and I hope to see you on the next one.